SEC Media Days is coming to an end, so it's time to talk about Cotton's preseason SEC rankings. Let's do this thing. Stick around. This is Way Offsides. 3, 2, let's go. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. Welcome to Way Offsides. SEC Media Days wraps up today. Alabama had their portion this morning. I think Florida's on the podium now as we're recording this. Let's just do it. It's typical for the media to post their preseason rankings following SEC Media Days. We're going to do it now. We're going to do our preseason SEC rankings. Now, before we get started, the 2025 season is going to be an absolute stunner. I feel like there are several SEC teams who can compete for a playoff spot, including our beloved Alabama Crimson Tide. So you're not going to want to miss anything. We're going to be doing live watch parties. We're going to be doing we've got an event for Tallahassee planned. We'll be on campus for Alabama's opener. We'll be doing game analysis. We'll also keep you up to date with recruiting through the whole thing. You can get it all right here in a one-stop shop. All you got to do is like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You won't miss a thing. So do that, and let's get started. In making this list, first of all, I did this pretty quickly. So my graphic is pretty basic, so don't judge. Actually, judge. Pop off. Make fun of me in the comments. I don't care. Do it. The more comments, the better. But leave a comment. Tell me, I want you to be interactive with this video. Tell me where I'm right, where I'm wrong, if my reasoning's right, if I'm being biased. I can't promise that I won't be biased in some sense of the word, but we'll take a look at it starting right now. Let's look. Here we go. Starting at the top over on the left side with Georgia, all the way over to the very end with Mississippi State. So let's start there. Let's start with Georgia. Georgia has been the dominant team in the SEC the last couple of seasons. Texas got a lot of hype leading into 2024. Every time they played Georgia, they got smoked. Now we'll see if the new SEC ruling regarding the shifts and stemming on the defensive line helps out, because Texas struggled with that mightily. But Georgia has been recruiting at Alabama levels for the past 4 or 5 seasons. They have a ton of talent on campus. It's always hard to count out Kirby Smart. He is the best head coach in college football, whether you want to admit it or not. Told you I'm going to try to be unbiased here. So you got to give the nod to Georgia starting off. I believe that Texas likely will be ranked higher than Georgia in the regular polls when they drop the AP poll. But I do think that when they meet, that will iron itself out, and it'll be Georgia walking away again with the dub. Now, I do have Georgia slightly above Alabama. Now, Georgia has had an Alabama problem in the past few years. Luckily for Georgia, that hasn't kept them from being successful in the big picture of things. They still made the playoff. They've still won championships. So for that reason, I'm going to put Bama at 2. And I think Kalen DeBoer and this staff is extremely talented. Excuse me. I think people are probably underestimating just how good this Alabama offense is going to be. We've heard a lot of talk around the defense. I feel like the offense could easily be a top 5 offense in the country, the defense as well. If they do that, it's going to be very, very hard to beat Alabama at home or on the road. For that reason, I put Alabama at number 2. I think that Kalen DeBoer is a better X's and O's coach than Steve Sarkisian. I know what you're going to say. He's the greatest play caller in college football. He has, but he hasn't won anything as the greatest play caller in college football. He hasn't made a championship game, a national championship game. Kalen DeBoer has, and he did it with much less talent. So I'm going to give the nod to Alabama here just because I think that people are seriously underrating the roster that Alabama has. I was very impressed with what Coach was saying about the player-led mentality and their ability to buy in and continuity, growing continuity through the staff and the roster going into this fall. And he seems like this is the most coachable team he's ever had. That speaks volumes to me. I think Alabama's going to go on a tear this year. They've also, just like Georgia, they've been recruiting very well, hasn't dropped off even without Nick Saban. Now, interchangeably, these top three, you can make an argument for Texas at number one, at number two. I got to see it first. I often, it's fun to get excited about somebody who hasn't played the quarterback position, especially when their last name is Manning. I get that. I understand that. But for me, I got to see it on the field. And Arch agrees with me. For those of you who want to hate, Arch said it yesterday. That's great and all, but I got to prove it on the field. And so I want to see that first. I could very well be wrong about Texas, but I'm also of the belief that because of how Texas approaches their recruiting, their NIL priority program, meaning that is the primary recruiting tool that they use. I don't see long-term success. I think they'll get close, they'll sniff it, but they won't ever get there. They may get there, but they won't do it multiple times just because it is so hard to do anyway. And then you tack on the potential problems you create in a locker room by using NIL as your primary recruiting tool. I've heard Shane Beamer, Kalen DeBoer, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart all talk about in the past couple of weeks how these relationships really matter. We've heard recruits talk about it. We've heard their parents talk about it, how these relationships over being a transaction are more important. And I think that'll rear its head. It has reared its head for other programs. Florida State was one last season. Texas is a much better coach program than Florida State. But I think just starting off, I got to see it. I don't know how it's going to mesh well on the field. But I could be very wrong. Texas could be the greatest college football team of all time this season. We shall see. Now, coming in at number 4, this one may shock some people. Ole Miss. Ole Miss has been quietly putting together a playoff roster. And not enough people are talking about this. Lane Kiffin, you want to talk about Sark being an X and O's guy? Lane Kiffin definitely is as well. Plus, I just love Lane Kiffin. I think he's hilarious. I think he's good for the sport in a whole. But you lose Jackson Dart. We get it. But this kid coming in, Austin Simmons at quarterback for Ole Miss, I've watched this kid over his high school career. This kid is real. He is the real deal. Now, that's not saying he's going to jump in there and he's going to mesh well and everything's going to pop off with no problem. Ole Miss seems to always lose a game somewhere where they shouldn't. Last year it was Florida. But Ole Miss, I think they're going to be a legitimate playoff contending team. The same 4 teams as last season that could have had a legitimate shot at the playoffs, I think will be there too. And then following them up, you've got South Carolina. Lenore Sellers could potentially be the best quarterback in the SEC, at least in terms of being a dual threat guy. He's doing everything the right way. He's saying all the right things. I have faith in Shane Beamer. They've recruited well. Beamer's really he's put some emphasis on the line of scrimmage on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. We all know that in this league, that's where you start. That's where you beef up. That's where you build your talent. That's where you build depth, and then you expand out. I think Beamer's doing it the right way. That trip for Alabama to South Carolina, if they're able to beat Alabama on that trip, that will catapult them really into the next level. I don't think they will. I think it'll be a very competitive game. But I think this Alabama team is going to be a lot different than it was in 2024. Now, following that up, you've got the Florida Gators. You would have asked me this last season. Florida, I think, is always kind of a dark horse to do something ridiculous. What do you mean by that? Well, I mean, Florida could be a 2-10 team and they always go and beat somebody they shouldn't. It's ridiculous. We don't know how they do it. But now with DJ Lagway at the quarterback position, you saw it when Graham Mertz went down last year. They brought DJ Lagway in, and as he got more comfortable, Florida started to really click. Now, if that defense can, if Anderson can get that defense figured out, and they're not as porous as they were at the start of the season, we all remember that Miami game, then Florida could literally, I don't want to say they'd be back to the mid 2000s Florida. That was a different breed, but Florida could easily find themselves in position later, the second half of the season, potentially knocking on the door of a playoff. I think they're still a season or two removed from that, but I do think that they're going to be very, very, very good. I do. I think the likely playoff contenders are the 5 teams you have over on the left side here. Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, South Carolina. Now, following up Florida, this is one where a lot of people are going to disagree. I have LSU. The media is very, very high on LSU. Much like Texas, I got to see it. I don't understand personally the hype around Garrett Nussmeier. I know LSU recruited well, but I don't trust Brian Kelly like I trust some of these other head coaches in the SEC, Shane Beamer, Steve Sarkisian, obviously Lane Kiffin, Kalen DeBoer, Kirby Smart. I don't trust Brian Kelly on that level. He's been able to sniff the door a couple of times at places he's been. But here at LSU, he's had so much talent and he's done very little with it. And I draw myself back to that Alabama game. Garrett Nussmeier at home, night game. You've got the worst Alabama team in probably, or at least offense in probably 15 years. That was your shot. And they weren't able to get it done. The pieces weren't there. Nussmeier played terribly. The defense, Alabama's defense, had kind of started to figure it out by then. That defense is going to see them again in Tuscaloosa this year. And then their run defense was atrocious. Jalen Milroe he didn't have to throw the ball to beat them. And there were several quarterbacks who beat LSU that way last season. And so I've got to see it. I've got to see Nussmeier take that next step. I've got to see LSU's run defense actually be good and not be so porous. They've been like that for a while. It's kind of weird talking about LSU and not having a solid run defense. That's kind of been a staple of LSU football for such a long time. But assuming those two things click, they're probably over on that left-hand column. Honestly, they could be a playoff contending team. Now, following them up, I've got Texas A&M. I like Mike Elko. They're recruiting well, but again, much like Texas, I feel like A&M is going to struggle with long-term success because NIL priority here. They've brought in some dudes. They had a really good transfer portal, but I just A&M still kind of feels like it's in flux from Jimbo Fisher and the massive exodus they had a couple of years ago from their number one recruiting class. So I'm not sold on the Aggies. I do think that they, much like any other team in the SEC, minus maybe Arkansas and Mississippi State, A&M could beat anybody on any given Saturday. But I think they're going to be middle of the pack here in 2025. Now, following them up, I've got Auburn, little brother on the other side of the state. A lot of hype around Auburn, but that hype around Auburn is only in Auburn circle. The media is not talking about Auburn, and they're not talking about Auburn for a reason. And that's mainly because they're unproven. I mean, Auburn offensively looked terrible last year, and I get it. They rolled the dice. Hugh Freeze basically said yesterday at SEC Media Days that, yes, they brought in Jackson Arnold because he beat Alabama. Well, just because he did it at Oklahoma when Alabama had Jalen Milroe as a starting quarterback, the offense couldn't sustain drives, defense was exhausted, doesn't mean he's going to be able to do it at Auburn. I do think Auburn could potentially be better than they were last season. They have an elite wide receiving room. If they want to keep it, they better be better than they were last season. But I just, again, much like A&M, LSU, I got to see it. I got to see it on the field to believe it. I hope they're terrible. I hope they're bad. But who knows? At this point, we'll have to see what happens with the Auburn Tigers. I'm not sold on it. Hugh Freeze, I don't trust him as a head coach. I didn't trust him at Ole Miss. Yes, he beat Alabama, but that's all he's ever been able to do. He's never made a conference championship, never made a playoff, never played for a national title. I don't see it happening at Auburn. I don't. Next up is Tennessee. Tennessee would have been much higher up on this list if you didn't have the Nico drama in the offseason. I think Nico was a decent quarterback. I think he might have been thrown into the fire a little bit too early, given the chance to advance or grow into that position. I think that he could have been exactly what Tennessee wanted him to be. Unfortunately, he was an NIL merchant, and it set Tennessee back this season. They're going to go from a playoff team to not sniffing it. And then rounding out the bottom half, you've got Oklahoma. You lose Jackson Arnold. I think they will be a little bit better this year. Keep in mind that Oklahoma team was depleted offensively. Problem is, man, that schedule is rough. It's rough for them. Brent Venables has not done a great job at Oklahoma since he's been there. I just don't It's Oklahoma. They're going to be in the bottom tier of the SEC. They could be in that medium tier, but I'm putting them in the bottom tier. And we'll just round this out really quick. You've got Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt will be good this year. They'll be fine. But a lot of people are going to be gunning for Vandy because of the mouth of Diego Pavia. I know Alabama will. Auburn probably will. A few other teams will. They'll avenge some losses against Vanderbilt, but they will, I think, be better than Arkansas. I believe this is Sam Pittman's last year with the Razorbacks, and then Mississippi State. So there you have it. SEC Media Days is in the books. Your top 5 from Cotton are Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, South Carolina in the SEC, followed up by Florida, LSU, Texas A&M, Auburn, Tennessee. Then we'll round it out with Oklahoma, Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Mississippi State. Tell me, who got it right? Who got it wrong? Should LSU be higher? Are you buying the LSU hype? Do you feel like Jackson Arnold is an answered prayer for Auburn? Do you think that Oklahoma is too low? Do you think I'm being unfair? Is Alabama too high? Who's your number 1 team going into the season this year? Thanks for sticking around. You guys are the best. We love you. A lot more content coming up, so be sure to subscribe, do all the things. We love each and every one of you. Say your prayers, read your Bibles, wash your daggum hands. Horns down. Beat Auburn and LSU and Tennessee too. Roll Tide.